They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Loan you that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, just stop.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. It is so exciting to welcome to Rogue Ways the thoughtful master and quiet genius of an astronomer who mapped the heavens and saw that it fit better when we looked at it from our specific viewpoint instead of from some ancient and archaic starting point, disconnected to us in time and space. The creator and architect of Mastering the Zodiac, the teacher of true astrology and astronomy, the interpreter of detail and intrapersonal truth, Athen Chimenti, welcome to Rogue Ways, and thank you for joining us today. And before we jump into that interview with Athens, let's remind everybody that you can go to rogueways.org and you can check out so much more content. I love to offer tarot readings for you to connect you with your higher self and spiritual messages that you need. I also do guidance sessions that are of the same sort of ilk, and yet we can use tarot or not during those. We could just have a conversation, but you still get those messages coming through and get deeply more connected to your soul. I also sell orgone pendants that you can wear that are powerful energy accumulators. They also come with a blessing that is just for you specifically and your specific needs. They're beautiful, one-of-a-kind pieces of art, and they're super affordable. So go find all of that at rogueways.org. And remember that you can also there get my novels, Earth, A Trough in Time, and Sine Curve of Aeons, Phytalis. That's the first two in the trilogy, and you can read them in any order, and they're awesome fictional novels and a bit of just channeled art, if you know what I mean. So go grab those as well. And of course, we always want you to come join us at rogue.locals.com, where the community is and where we would love to have your participation and support of the show. So go check that out as well. And now on to your episode with Athens. All right, Athen, we do a pointless question of the episode every time on Rogue Ways, and I was going to ask you if you could speak only one word today, what would it be?
Has to be presence. Has to be presence. Yeah, mindfulness, awareness of the current moment. I think it's very important.
I love that as a word to focus on too for anybody, because I think, like you said, it's a very important. It's almost like a superpower. I think if you can develop it truly, and I don't know how many people do it at all,
Well, there's always varying degrees. We do our best, I think, right? So
True.
There's always more presence, but always good. It's like that gong bell I think we were talking about last time.
Yeah.
Get that gong bell, be present, and mindfulness.
Yeah, I really love it. And I've been playing with this concept lately because, there's all of this, be in the now, be here, be present. And then it's come up recently in a few episodes we've done of well, can we ever even really be present? And even when we're being present, aren't we sort of focusing on how that's going to make our life better, which is kind of focusing on the future? And I don't know if you and I were talking about that or if that was someone else.
I don't recall, but I definitely thought of that before. We're always viewing it through the lens of the mind, right? Through the ego. So there's never, full presence or full enlightenment. We're still in our physical bodies as, spiritual beings. So we do our best there.
Yeah. And it's not a bad thing. I guess that was the thing I liked about it too, is to remember that it's not horrible. If you're thinking about the past or the future, these are things that we just do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's so important to ground it too in our physical life, practical life, and be aware of our limitations,
Yeah. Yeah, it's really a good point. I'd like to find this balance here where we're, understanding where we might want to go, where we might want to be, improve, but also accepting that where we're at is not a bad thing and that we're perfectly exactly where we should be.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I always also like if you can give an overview for people who maybe aren't familiar with you or haven't watched a previous episode with me or haven't seen your channel or any of those things, just what is sidereal astrology and how is it different from what people might be used to?
Right. Yeah. So mainstream astrology is using the seasons, and they also use an even 30 degrees for each of the signs. So with true sidereal, we're using the actual size of the constellations and how you would see them visibly in the sky. So with true sidereal, it's basically the equivalent of going outside and seeing, okay, where's everything actually at? And we would think that's the way with mainstream, but they're actually, in Western at least, they're using the seasons. So they've got everything fixed on the seasons, where if you're born like at the beginning of spring, you're definitely in Aries, no matter what, and it stays fixed that way. But the stars are actually slightly changing relative to the seasons. So that's why at this point, there's a whole sign and sometimes up to 2 signs difference between the mainstream and the true sidereal system. Yeah. But I do believe both are accurate. Like tropical, I think, is showing more of a physical experience because it's seasonal. So it's more like 3D, like more physical experiences. But I do believe the true sidereal chart does show the more essential elements of the soul and the being in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting to me to hear that take that tropical is still accurate or does still have value, but maybe in this like slightly different lens or application. And that I feel like the reason why I like this true sidereal method even more is, for one, I just liked the concept because I had never heard it before I found you, that, oh yeah, why wouldn't we just look around and see like where things are, instead of going off some system that doesn't necessarily fit anymore, but also that idea that it is the most essential. I feel like for me, at least, every time I was ever looking at astrology, I'm like, tell me about my essential self. Like,
Right.
I don't really care about anything. I mean, I do, but you know what I mean? That's what I
Right.
want.
Right. And I think that's what most people want. It's just most people don't know. We don't know. Like when I started astrology, I had no idea. I thought, when they said your sun was in Gemini or whatever, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like that's where the sun was, right? Like you'd expect that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think just with the awareness that like, oh, there is this whole other system, and then more people becoming aware of that, it's huge because now they can look at least both systems, because I do believe, it's at the very least, you should be looking at the actual constellations, like you're saying, right? So once people become aware of that, then yeah, they can start to see and choose and see which one fits, resonates more with them.
Yeah, because it is interesting when I look at my traditional chart, it does fit me, but we'll talk about it, I guess. Well, maybe we could just do it now. I was going to ask you if you wanted to look at my chart for a second and just give me like a blast of what your interpretation is of it. Because for me, at least, what I could do on my own, I was like, this fits me way better. It's not that the old chart doesn't fit me. It's that this is even more like depth and accuracy.
Yeah. Yeah. And from what I know about you, I think it does totally fit. So first of all, your rising sign's Leo. So with the rising sign in sidereal, it's more of who we're destined to become more of. So all the stuff you're doing, like with the podcast and expressing yourself, Leo is all about self-expression. It's all about doing the things we're passionate about and we love in life. So it's that creative self-expression, things we love, and so you are destined to become more of that Leo, more of that expressive person as time goes on. And then, so if we look at the ruler of Leo, which is the sun, we can see where that's manifesting through. And so for you, it's through Ophiuchus, the healer constellation, which isn't in the mainstream system, right?
Right.
So the way you express yourself and the way you view life is through the deeper realms, right? What can be brought to the surface, excavating things for people to become aware of. And in a sense, like a modern healer. I think we were talking about that last time too. It's like a modern healer, natural healer, in terms of what you're destined to become more of, but also what you're born with, because it is the sun. So because you view life through that lens. And then the sun's very close to Mercury. So in a sense, it kind of makes you like a Gemini in that sense, because you also view life through the lens of not only the deeper realms, but how you can work with them and understand them and communicate them. So a lot of this Gemini, like sharing ideas, communicating, learning, right? All through the deeper realms of Ophiuchus. That's really, I think, the strong energy there. Plus Neptune's quite close. So that has to do with like maybe spirituality and presence and finding more peace, more of the spiritual dynamics. And it's all operating in your 4th house, which is home. So it's like, working from home and doing these podcasts from home, like that's where you'll gain your energy and vitality, is when you do have that kind of environment, that protective environment, in order to dive deep, in order to share this information, stuff like that.
See that that little snippet there, which was very, very deep and analytically rich, is more accurate than anything that I've ever looked at before. And I think that anybody watching this show for any significant amount of time will be like, oh yeah, that's like exactly her, right? Like this is what I do. And I guess I hope that everyone goes and looks at their sidereal chart from your site. You just let people pop in their, coordinates and their information and get their whole chart. And that's pretty awesome. And then I know you do readings and work with people in sessions as well to help them understand and deal with that, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So on the website, so it's masteringthezodiac.com. You can go there. There's a free chart calculator. You just type in your details. You'll be able to see your chart. There's also some tutorials in terms of reading them if you're not used to reading charts. But yeah, there's educational videos. There's also sessions for those that want readings, courses as well for those that want to learn astrology. So pretty much everything, almost everything you would need for astrology and uncovering your charts on the website. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty excellent resource that you provide with people, and you have so much content that is really nice, that helpful and cool for people to look into. So that's why I hope people go check it out if they haven't yet. And you'll see when you get your chart that just like you were describing, you know, how some signs are only here in the sky for this long and some are a bit longer. And so as other charts are exactly equal, you know, the charts in the sidereal, true sidereal method are reflecting that exact amount of time they're in the sky. So it's neat just to see visually too how it's different.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like looking at the sky. And then we brought up that point last time about certain signs are larger. So it's going to be like a larger amount of the population that are like Virgos versus like Libras. So there's the whole collective thing too, which is interesting. Like having that kind of energy manifested collectively, like more Virgos and stuff. Yeah.
And then it makes me wonder, like, is there a purpose to that? You know, like we need more of this and we need a little bit less of this over here, you know, or maybe not even that we need, but like you can only handle this much of this over here or something.
Right. And like naturally you only need that much, right? So like with Virgo, it's like work, personal development, like taking care of things. That's a very large part of life.
That's true.
Yeah.
I like this. Kurt Vonnegut had this idea once that you have to have any like population that will last for any amount of time. You have to have a certain number of, you know, red-headed females and then like tall males or just like all these. And there's a certain number of each or something. And I feel like that kind of fits this even better.
Interesting.
You know, you need a certain amount of these and this for everything to work out.
Yeah. That's what they say too. Like modern scientists, they say if one little bit of the universe, like was different, like the whole thing would fall apart. Like everything is exact proportion of exactly what's needed. You know, I think astrology reminds us of that. And even in our development, like we have these transiting planets, so they're going through these either large or small constellations. So it's at these times where, you know, it takes longer maybe to do Virgo, right? Or just, you know, so there's more time needed for that energy to develop, right? Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Whole other dimension. I love that. And so last time we talked in August actually, and we've talked about how the rest of the year might go kind of briefly. And I'm wondering how you feel like it all kind of lined up, and did it go according to expectation, or were there any surprises, or how did that look?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. So, you know, since then, so the big emblem of last year was the restructuring of things. And we saw that a lot with the systems, even the economic stuff, and all that transformation. So that was Saturn and Pluto being next to each other with Jupiter. So it was very much about transforming systems, both personally and collectively. Like personally, through a lot of sessions, I realized it's actually been a very constructive year for a lot of individuals, like productively and like, you know, creating change in their life and stuff. But yeah, collectively, a lot of that. So that's kind of where we're coming into this year, but in the sense of like starting to implement these things that have changed, right? So whatever got restructured in your life last year, it is a longer term energy. It's good to continue to build upon this stuff because Saturn, Jupiter, we just had that conjunction back in December. And so now they're moving into Capricorn as we speak. So this is all about what we want to accomplish, what we want to achieve, what's going to take time and build from that new beginning, because conjunctions are like new moons. They're like new beginnings. So from all that now starting to, move that energy forward. And then I think we talked about the COVID stuff. Did we talk about that last time? Yeah. So surprisingly, like when they started releasing the vaccines, it was almost exactly on the Ophiuchus eclipse. It was crazy. So Ophiuchus is the healer constellation. And so I think we're anticipating some sort of new, you know, the medical or something shifting with that, probably vaccine or something. And so that was December 14th eclipse. So yeah, that was interesting as well. This whole new healer energy, which we still have this year, but that was a new beginning that we'll probably see more assimilated this year. Which is probably by the summertime.
I think exactly what you said last time we talked, that we would see something new kind of come out around that December-ish area, and then we would see it implemented and take root beyond that. So it's pretty amazing. I love things like that. And with Jupiter and Saturn, I always feel like Jupiter is like this, you know, and I could be totally wrong, but in my head, Jupiter's this like jovial, like good natured, like expansive, like everybody wins, everybody's free. That's like, you know, and then Saturn is more like, okay, it's time to get real. Like are you ready for this? Like, get in order and be structured and organized. And I see that those two combined would be like the best possible way to be, right? I just feel like
I honestly
people,
think so.
yeah, I feel like people looked
Yeah.
at it like this is this horrible thing, or that Saturn is this evil deity or energy. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with being committed and being like,
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and they're polarities. That's why. So
yeah.
with astrology, we see all the polarities. So like the sun and moon is the most essential polarity. Like it's pretty interesting that both are almost equal size in the sky, yet they're completely different sizes and completely different distances and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it's synchronistic of like these are two polarities which are given equal weight. And so like with the sun and moon, the sun's your outer focus, outer personality, your moon's your inner world and your spiritual life, both equally important. And that's when we have a new moon and they're conjunct. It is a great energy. It's about incorporating both, right? The outward and the inward.
Yeah.
Same with Venus, Mars. So that deals more with the interpersonal stuff with relationships. But Jupiter and Saturn's polarity. So Jupiter is the expansion. So it's like the more masculine principle. Saturn's the more contractile feminine. So it's more about like structure, patience. But when they get together, super constructive time because it's all about manifestation with that pair. So Jupiter is believe it and it'll become true. Saturn is work hard and it'll come true. But what's better than having both of those together, because you have the inspiration and you have the hard work, right? So very constructive. Yeah.
I see. Again, I'm very amateur with astronomy, astrology, any of this stuff, but I try. And I had an event right at that conjunction time that was for exactly this. Like, let's focus on our inner self, our spiritual world, but let's do it in a way where we're like, we're practicing and we're like creating, what we want, and we're committing to that. And so we're like kind of putting those together. And I'm so glad that it worked as well as I thought it might have.
Yeah, perfect for that. Saturn grounding it. Yeah, grounding all that stuff. Yeah.
That's excellent. Well, where are we right now in terms of astrological energy? So this is Sunday, the 23rd, 24th?
Yeah, 24th. Yep. So yeah, so we have a full moon coming up and this is going to be on Thursday. So that's in Cancer. So the main emblem of the year is Capricorn, right? With both Saturn and Jupiter going in there. So again, accomplishment, achievement, like what do you want to build for the long term? So Cancer is the constellation opposite that colder, more grounded Saturn, Capricorn energy. So Cancer reminds us to connect to our feelings and the more personal energy. So that's the moon we were talking about there, the inner world. So yeah, in this case, I would say this week, it's really good to certainly continue with anything that does require perseverance and achievement and all this. But then to remember that, of course, it's important to get that protective time. So spending time with home, family, those close to us, creating a protective environment for ourselves to nurture and care for ourselves, connect to our bodies, our health, our well-being. And then externally, of course, caring and nurturing for others, right? So this will be a shift here about incorporating some of this Cancer energy for the next 2 weeks, but I think it's a good energy for the whole year. Because with so much going on in Capricorn, you always kind of want to balance it out with the opposite sign anyways. So I'd say throughout the whole year, it's, really good for that caring, protective, nurturing kind of energy for ourselves and others. But with that, there's a lot of fire, right? So for those of you who felt maybe the past almost couple of weeks now, Mars has been entering Aries and Uranus has been here. So that's a lot of fire with this mix. So it is a great time of like moving forward, taking action and initiative, but just keeping that balance again, right? So making sure we are, again, protecting, caring for ourselves and stuff. So it's good to find that conscious and constructive way of fire. So what can we assert? What can we take action towards? And a lot of it's about having more freedom in our life, probably with Uranus, like change and doing things more important to us for our true selves. So how can we do that consciously? If there's not enough fire, maybe bring some of that in, some of that initiative. If there's too much, just practicing mindfulness and non-attachment to our needs and desires can help that manifest, more directly. So these are all the, in this case, the cardinal signs. So it's all about directing energy, directing it towards accomplishment and achievement, balancing that with directing it in the personal life. And then what do we want for our true selves, right? And if there's a way to integrate all three of those this week, I think that's very important.
Wow. Well, someone in one of my groups suggested that we do a meditation because we do some intention meditation sometimes, and we, visualize what we want for this person and all of these things. And they said, well, why don't we do a group one where everyone chooses something that they want to focus on for themselves, to care for themselves and to get
Oh,
right, and then we put it all together. We visualize that for ourselves, and then we visualize putting it all together in this like stack of papers, almost like you wrote it down and put it in the stack,
oh,
and
okay.
merging them all into one, and like doing this exactly at the moment of the full moon. And I was like, what a badass meditation. Like, let's do it. So we're doing that this Thursday.
Perfect. The fire and then the accomplishments and the caring. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I wonder if we should, like, in our mind, burn the stack of paper, instead of like
Maybe.
merging it into one to like get that fire energy. Like, not like we're dissolving it, right? But like we're sending it
Right.
up to.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is Venus is going to be conjoining Pluto at the same time. And so Pluto represents transformation. So I think it'll be really good for transformation stuff. Yeah. Shedding of the skin and then the phoenix merging up out of the ashes. Yeah.
How
great.
cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
With
this.
values and yeah.
That's beautiful. This is just like how life works out sometimes. There's just like happenstance, but perfect.
Yeah. And I think that's what it is. Like we're all attuned to this energy. Like everything's happening in these cycles, right? And even if we don't know like what's going on in the astrology, it's like we feel it. We're part of nature, So right now it's Capricorn time to balance out with Cancer, and there's all this fire, and we're utilizing that fire as well. So
that's so cool. I like pointing that out. Like you said, this is a natural system and we're all in it. Like whether we think we know enough about it, or like I always disparage my own knowledge of it, right? But like you said, we're all in tune with it at some level, whether we kind of recognize that or not. So that's really awesome.
Yeah.
So what about the rest of the year then? What should we have our eyes towards or be looking out for or expecting?
Yeah. So Saturn squaring Uranus. So it's again that same kind of thing from the fire. So Uranus is in Aries, so that's the assertive energy and all that. And then the building of the structures with the Capricorn Saturn. So, collectively, we might see a lot of like clashing, obviously, I think between those that may want more freedom or independence, maybe something like that, with the systems and structures, which is Saturn. Because with Saturn and Jupiter going into Capricorn, it's a lot of ramping up of like systems, right? So again, it's like what got restructured last year is now really being built upon. So there's going to be a lot of influence on that. So, collectively, just good to be conscious of that, again, non-attachment, all this kind of stuff. But personally, yeah. So very good year of seeing, again, what can we induce change with and start to get outside of our comfort zone. Because whenever there is a new beginning like this, and especially squaring Uranus is saying, okay, there's some things that can change, or at least some things we can think about a little bit differently and experiment with. Right. So the more we're willing to experiment, try new things, get outside that comfort zone in regards to what we want and what speaks to that true self, can be super, super constructive time for that. So yeah, that's the Saturn square Uranus kind of energy. Anything technological, innovative, visionary stuff. What do we want to see for our future? Right. This is all good stuff to challenge ourselves with constructively with whatever it is that we're building. Yeah. So yeah, that's going to be going on through the whole year. Starts February. And then that's going to be going on. So from February 17th all the way through December 24th.
Wow.
With that one, probably something shifting in June. June, again, with the eclipse seasons coming up as well. A lot of the new stuff that started collectively or personally in December will be coming up to its heightened energy and its full culmination probably mid-year. And so things are going to make a lot more sense because we've had a lot of watery energy and uncertainty, obviously, collectively. A lot of this is Neptune finishing Aquarius. So Aquarius is the future. Neptune blurs the lines. So Neptune's starting to leave there in March, leave Aquarius and go into Pisces where Neptune's much more comfortable. So I do think there will be more clarity lifting off of that deeper water energy. Again, the fire will still be there. And then mid-year, once we have the second context and the eclipses, things really get put into full motion where it's like, okay, we become clear in terms of what's going on, probably collectively, and how things will be. And then in our personal life, like what do we want to implement? So very constructive, particularly second half of the year, like June for the remainder of the year, because by that point, there's more clarity, things have come to an awareness, and then it's implementation mode. Whereas the first half of the year still has a little bit of this acclimation. We're still acclimating to this new energy. Yeah.
Excellent. I love that you always emphasize the personal will and the personal direction that we have, despite, I think some people think that astrology can be very fixed and like determinate, and you always emphasize what we can focus on and what we can kind of do outside of that, or with that, I should say, with all of those energies moving with them.
Yeah, it's like the weather, I think, it's like if it's raining outside, like certain things are better in the rain, you know what I mean? Like maybe you want to work that day or something, but it doesn't mean you can't do things in the rain. You totally can. So there's the weather, and I think that's what astrology is showing, is like the weather forecast. And knowing what that is helps you do maybe certain things that are more conducive for that time. But honestly, there's free will. I mean, you can do what you want, in that time. But I think, working within the cycles, it's kind of like being in flow with the theme. Yeah, astrology shows us that, I think.
It's a perfect analogy because people can relate to it and be like, oh yeah, and why rail against the weather? You can't change it really, right? But you can carry an umbrella, or you can do whatever you want with it.
Within it, exactly. Yep.
And I just think that emphasizes to people that, you still be intending whatever you want for yourself. Like you keep saying, like, what do you want? What's your deeper purpose here? And how can you work best with that in these times? Don't get so attached to whatever, they or them or whoever might be doing with these energies too, that you are like stuck there and not moving anymore, right? Like you always want to look back to what you can do.
Yeah. And I think perception is like a really big deal, because like last year, the conjunctions were in Sagittarius. So collectively, that was a whole transformation of perception and like views of life. You can see how much that's changed collectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. So personally, it's now like, what are your beliefs like, and perspectives, and just remember like how powerful that is, because whatever you believe, won't necessarily by itself manifest reality. Like that's just Jupiter's side, like believe it and becomes a reality. Like that's true. But that is a huge part of manifestation, right? Our beliefs, our perspective, our view of life. So yeah, definitely pay attention to that, and like, just be aware of like others' beliefs and like that influence it has on you as well, just so you can entertain a bunch of different beliefs and a bunch of different perspectives. But then at the end of the day, kind of maintain your own and be aware of your own and how that might manifest or impact your life. I think it's super important.
I'm really working on respecting other people's point of view lately, because I'm like, why are you thinking this? But okay, that's what you're doing.
That's something we're all working on.
Yeah, it's its own life struggle. Yeah. Well, we talked about, the inauguration last time we talked, which no one will ever get to hear that episode.
Yeah, but unfortunately.
The inauguration has passed. And I remember you were talking about, there being some sort of rebellious, fiery resistance energy that would be kind of wrapped up in that. And I wonder how you feel like that sort of played out, or if we still see that, or how it's looking.
Yeah. It wasn't, so that's what I was saying too. Like it wasn't a major thing, but it's like more of a monthly kind of thing, right? So yeah, we did see some of that with like the White House, and then some of the, I think it was like the DNC over in Washington, some stuff going on over there.
Yeah.
So it's like still kind of the energy we're going to see, I think,
just
throughout
like
the year. It's
subtle.
Just that. Yeah.
Maybe subtle
it's going on,
the right word.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like behind the scenes kind of thing. Yeah. But, yeah, it's going on. And then even in our personal lives, like you were saying too, it's like, there's just that kind of like want to express ourselves. We want, people kind of like, discuss these things and, assert our kind of opinions and beliefs. I think that can be very constructive, as long as it's done constructively and, not damaging and stuff. So I'm glad it wasn't anything major, which means it's good. People working with it, I think, in constructive ways online and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes right back to it. Like, I need to take my own fiery rebellion energy and be like, okay, I can use this, but let's not let it like direct at people.
Right. Yeah, be damaging or too disruptive. Like disruption's good, but like, in moderation, with awareness.
Right. Well, we didn't talk about this last time, but I did want to get your take on, and I know you talk about it a lot in a lot of different places, but I really have like a minor obsession with Chiron. And if you want to give us like a little insight into Chiron, or maybe even see what Chiron's doing in my chart or something to give an example. I just have all of these synchronicities that always come back to Chiron. And so I'm like, why? What is it with Chiron?
Yeah. So Chiron is the ruler of Ophiuchus. So for you, he's like your sun's ruler, right? So the ruler of your chart's the sun, which is then ruled by Chiron.
Huh.
So very important for you in your chart. But collectively, it's wherever we're healing, and also where we're healing, we end up becoming a healer for others. So the story of Chiron is basically he injured his foot. And so he spent his whole life trying to heal that wound, which was an incurable wound, meaning the wound's always kind of there. But by doing that healing of that specific area, he became a healer, right? He learned to heal. So it's symbolic for where we feel wounded. But the more we do that energy, we actually become very good at that area and can help heal others with that area. So for you, Chiron's in Aries, and it's in your 9th house. And so for you, it's through all this stuff like publishing, broadcasting, 9th house stuff. It's Jupiter's house. So it deals with sharing your wisdom and your beliefs and your perspectives with others. So by doing that, like that's healing and rejuvenating for you, but that's also where others are healing. So again, makes total sense for you because again, it's saying it's through the broadcasting, through publishing, the sharing your wisdom, which is how you're expressing yourself as the healer archetype. Right.
Wow.
So
that makes perfect
and then
sense.
And then with Aries, it's like also kind of being a leader or a pioneer and kind of helping direct that energy, that fiery way through the beliefs, through the perspectives, through sharing knowledge and stuff.
See, and that's the part that I've resisted for longer than anything else. Because I'm like, oh no, we're all leaders together. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Which is true. But I mean,
that's how Chiron works.
Yeah.
It's like we see the kind of underlying spiritual meaningfulness behind that too. Yeah. Could be a little more giving and wanting to help and stuff. Yeah.
And why did Chiron even become like an emphasis in our systems if it's, just a like an asteroid, right?
Yeah. Well, comet, between Saturn and Uranus. So when we speak of like these polarities, so basically when you go from the Jupiter Saturn energy, which deals with manifestation, that polarity between there and the next one, which is Uranus and Neptune, which deals with doing things more important to us on a true self. So it's like deeper into the psyche, more about true self stuff, is Chiron. So is very important because he's like a gateway. So it's basically saying that if you want to go from, basic manifestation and the physical world with Saturn and even philosophy and stuff, to go into more of that true self connection, you got to heal. You got to pass through Chiron. Yeah.
What a beautiful system.
It's crazy how much the solar system actually has this pattern too. And then there's, it's wild. Like even between like Mars and Venus is the asteroid belt. So we hear like Ceres as like the asteroid and like the feminine goddesses of the asteroid belt. You have to pass through those. So to get from the interpersonal Venus-Mars relationship stuff, you got to go through those before you get to Saturn and Jupiter. Yeah.
That's so fascinating. So it's almost
everything
like
in pairs.
Yeah. And it's almost like it was done on purpose.
It looks that way. Yeah, seriously.
I love that because it's just the meaningless, like, oh, it just kind of blobbed together in this pattern. It's just how it is. It's like, well, I guess maybe that's possible, and we're just projecting, this pattern onto it and stuff. But it's so perfect that it's pretty hard to land there.
Very hard, yeah. Even Mercury, like Mercury's more androgynous, so he doesn't have a polarity. He's like more neutral. But again, he's the gateway between the sun and moon energy because you have the sun, then you have Mercury, then a polarity, right? Then you have the asteroid belt, then the polarity, then Chiron, the polarity, and then Pluto is the last. Yeah. Well, so they call him a planet or dwarf planet, but if you look at his orbit, it's very elliptical like this and very tilted, which is very symbolic of a comet. So like if we look at the creation of the solar system, like the planets were all on the flat plane when the sun was being created, right? But anything that's tilted like that is an indication that it wasn't created during the time the other planets were created. So it was something at some point out in the probably distant like Kuiper belt that got trapped as a planet, as we call it. But again, it's the transformation. So after Neptune, Uranus, the true self integration, then you have to pass through Pluto, which is what we might consider the final transformation, right? Yeah. Before we go to maybe past lives and stuff. And that's why Pluto's always associated with the underworld and the afterlife, having to pass through, Pluto or Hades. Yeah.
Which is weird. It reminds me of that whole thing in, secret societies and stuff where you go through like the death, of self in order to get to like the true self or something, right? Like Pluto's kind of like that.
That's exactly right. Huh. Yep. Transformation.
Well, we could probably talk about astrology forever because you are so knowledgeable, but I'd like you to share with people if you have anything coming up, if you have any sort of specials or deals where you want them to go, how they can connect with you more and anything like that.
Yeah, so definitely check out masteringthezodiac.com. There's also a YouTube channel by the same name, Mastering the Zodiac. So there's weekly videos there for the collective energies. Then, of course, all the resources on the website. But yeah, everyone that's a listener of yours gets 20% off personal readings. So if you want to send them the link, I'll send it to you.
Awesome.
And yes, and go from there.
That's so kind of you. I'm excited. I might take advantage of it myself. And what are some final sort of thoughts that you want to leave people with before we end?
Final thoughts? I think we covered. I mean, perception, huge, big beliefs. Look at this year in terms of like, what you want to manifest for your future. Like you said, Saturn and Jupiter next to each other, super constructive time. Incorporate some freedom and presence, always presence.
Presence. I love it. Well, thank you so much, fellow travelers of the path. It is a beautiful thing. And this has been your analog electric concentric dose of wisdom, according to the master of the Zodiac, Athen Chimenti. And Athen, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Lindsay. Always a pleasure.
All around us are infinite signs and encouragements to keep going, to look deeper, to think clearly, and to trust our senses and our ability to interpret our surroundings. And when we do so, we see that we are cradled amidst the most intricately planned and energetically rich bosom of infinity, rife with the trappings of an intelligence and intention we might otherwise mistake if we aren't paying attention. So until you master paying attention to the patterns embedded in all that surrounds you, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
Man, they at it again, and I'm out to tell the truth once more. That's right. It's on the cracking, unknown in the house. APOGZ, that's right. Hitting the stereo near you. Truth is the best thing, and it's on. Yo, I once thought that I wanted to get Denver on track, but there's something more bigger than that. Something lurking, waiting to blow this state right off the map. A hidden agenda related to September. Doves carved up on the wall next to the highway. Up in the concrete, while rolling home next to where I stay. With state's destruction, Lockheed Martin malfunction. While NORAD's in a mountain anticipating our next move. My heart's jumping and I'm like, fuck waiting. While crooked taxes are burning a hole in my pocket. With $1 bill in the pyramid that's watching. Instead of having a capstone on top of it, they have an eye with a fast surprise while you're flossing it. Greedy niggas jocking it, politics plotting it. So who you vote for really doesn't mean shit. So save your energy from being drained by the enemy. Skull and bones of Freemasonry, envisioning dreams of them chasing me. Skull and bones of Freemasonry, envisioning dreams of them chasing me. Skull and bones of Freemasonry, secret agencies with a plan to dominate all of man. Check the records of DIA, strange murals and paintings similar to the ones next to the highway. With pyramids and flames underneath them looking like they're about to fly away. I can't be tripping, but it sounds like I'm on acid. Most people slipping, taken below DIA, held captive in the near future, where they won't hesitate to reinstate new laws for a bigger cause. I'm talking about established civilian concentration camps, introducing the military's labor programs. Expand your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you witness the belittlement of your people. Expand your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you witness the belittlement of your people.
Feds ain't stretching the truth, the script that he's spitting is true. Pay attention to what's going on or it might happen to you. When it's happening to cellular communication monitor, behavior studied and controlled through chemicals bombing nerves. This word of Jesus ain't got anything to do with it. Religious cynic where experiments cage and lace in terms of accepting limits. Things that can't explain to the sky when I'm in the Rockies. Chakra systems limited due to the voltage overhead pop. Mind control victims, slap clips and machine guns for recess. FCC will help us speak less, manipulate us through weak feel right nonfiction with the CIA trying to kill me filthy. Talking about the underground facility at DIA, no one feel that place laced with hints. Notice whenever I return home, like some references in a new world Masonic capstone. Croy and Area 51 workers the building, I don't mean to rant. In the face of an emergency, it doubles as a FEMA camp. The reaction solution trickery repeated through history. NORAD's listening in using technology, tracking where you piss and sleep. Paranoid or just facing the fact. Better watch what you say, it's another day under the Patriot Act. Extend your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you intercept a little bit of your people. Extend your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you intercept a little bit of your people. The idea is to bring
people to the point where they are helpless, passive, and unable to assert their own creative power to form anything else. Success for people like this is measured in terms of money, which they then translate into power.
Corruption and violations of the Constitution. Secret societies, the push for one world government. I'd like to get corruption and violations of the Constitution.
The idea is to bring people to the point where they are helpless, passive, and unable to assert their own creative power to form anything else.